This is the Good Girl Podcast. I am Cameo King, the host of the Good Girl Podcast. The Good Girl Podcast, a podcast of women's confessions about our faith, flaws, femininity, and culture. On this podcast, we hold space for women. And when I say that, it is a space to allow women to destigmatize the messy process of life. And how we do that is through confessions. So you share your confession on a specific topic, we bring you on, or we may discuss it, or heck, I may just have a confession I want to share, because this environment is freeing, it is healing, and it really allows you to grow and to be your best self. And I really want women to walk in their freedom and their wholeness and their fullness, and that encompasses every part of who they are. And that's the part that's still learning, the messy part, the ugly parts, and the beautiful parts. And I think that is what makes us who we are. And so that's what I do. So this week's podcast, I'm going to hop into it, but I'm in a weird space because much of the U.S. and the world, we are just now learning about the horrific death of Ahmad Arbury. This after a video was released where he was chased down. He's a black man, where he was chased down and shot in Brunswick, Georgia, and he was simply on a jog. There are two men that shot him, or one person that actually shot him, and has not been charged. And all this was released on video. And they are white, and one is a former police officer. And I'm honestly in a space where I don't know. Like I don't know if it's the fact that I'm still processing, or that so many other things are going on. And because I think a lot of us have done so many things to, amid this pandemic, we have done things to protect our peace, to survive, to do what we are supposed to do. And then this is kind of like another blow. And so you just don't, I don't know, y'all. I mean, that's it. That is it. And it's odd because I don't know if it's a numbness, or if it's kind of like a quiet storm. Especially for those of us who are doing the work, or doing some type of work that we believe we're called to make this place called Earth, life, better. But when I say it's a numbness, especially for me as a black woman, I'm black, and there are people around me that are black. My father is black. My mother is black. My brother is black. My cousins are black. My uncles are black. My aunts are black. My friends are black. I may have a black son or daughter, or a black husband. And so when things like this happen, some of the first thoughts are, what am I supposed to do? And you just don't have the answers. You just don't have the answers. So I do not have the answers, y'all. I am at a loss for words. And so I decided to do what I normally, can do, is stay in my lane, basically. And when I say stay in my lane, I do believe I'm contributing to the health and the wholeness of individuals. And so I allow people to tell their stories authentically, especially stories that expose gutted truths, and that also free and heal. And so Mother's Day is on Sunday, and I can't imagine the pain of losing a child to racism, to cowards who hide in their skin and count their masculinity, their toxic masculinity, by a man-made object like a gun. But they can't even utter a truth about their soul. And I don't have that story yet. I do not have that story yet. But until that story comes, I did still want to take a different approach to the Mother's Day conversation. And I want to talk about women who still have a loss, but talk about women who struggle with infertility. And I hope this conversation is freeing, healing, and informative for those who listen. And I'm somewhat familiar with the topic of infertility because of my friends, family, and simply because I'm a woman who eventually wants to have kids someday. And I learned about the woman you're going to hear from in a few because she wrote an article in the New York Times titled The Trauma of Infertility. Listen to this short story about her.
And from there, I decided to start my blog. And I called it The Broken Brown Egg because you can't have an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And, brown eggs don't get thought about as often.
Meet Regina Townsend. She is the founder of The Broken Brown Egg.
Well, really, I was looking for something to kind of get my voice back. Infertility kind of takes your voice away because you feel like you don't have any control. You think your body's supposed to do something and it doesn't.
It's an organization founded over a decade ago to increase awareness of African American infertility and reproductive health. The Broken Brown Egg was born out of Regina's personal experience of struggling with infertility for 10 years.
And so when you're looking at the adoption paperwork, when you're looking at the fertility center ads, all of it was white couples. Or you'd see white couples with a Black baby. It was not showing that African American men and women are dealing with this issue, that we adopt also, that we do foster care also, that we do IVF also, and that it's not just about babies.
She says that education and dialogue about reproductive health is needed, especially in Black communities.
I think for me, it was more so that when the conversations are had, when it's on television, when it's on magazines, it was never Black women. So if you had any kind of reproductive health issues, you felt like, well, then something's really wrong with me, because the ads in my community are for abortion. They're for, they're talking about how many kids Black women have. They're talking about STDs and STIs. The conversation in our community is not balanced.
So on Regina's journey to change the conversation, she became a proud IVF mom and learned more about herself than she could have ever imagined.
Infertility and dealing with it has taught me to be a vocal patient. It's taught me to take my health care into my own hands. And when I'm in a doctor's office, to speak up. It's helped me to learn patience. It's helped me to learn how to have inner peace. And not because I'm always at peace, but because it has taught me the coping mechanisms that I needed to get through those 10 years, helped me in so many other areas.
So I hope now you know a little bit more about Regina Townsend and the Broken Brown Egg. I will post links to the Broken Brown Egg on the Good Girl Podcast article page. Just head to thegoodgirlpodcast.com. But let's hop right into our confession session. Listen up. So Regina, I'm excited to have you on the Good Girl Podcast. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think this conversation by all means is a necessary conversation because this topic hits so many women, and it's one of those conversations, one of those experiences that you have behind closed doors that you don't tell anyone, or that you feel as though you are the only person that is experiencing this. And just from life situations, I understand when you feel as though you're on an island experiencing something, that's probably one of the worst feelings in the world.
Yes.
Regina, one interesting phrase that you said that I want to start off with is you said, babies do not cure infertility.
Yes, ma'am. I tell people that all the time because people, especially on the outside, the thought is, especially people who have kids, I hear it where it's like, well, I mean, you got a baby. So, because especially there's also secondary infertility. So secondary infertility is people who have given birth to a child and now want to give birth to a sibling, and for whatever reason, they're experiencing infertility now. When those people have talked to me about how difficult it is for them, that's one of the first things that they say, is that people's idea is, well, you already have a baby, so just be grateful for the one you got. And that discredits and ignores all of the other feelings that come with infertility. Infertility is not just about babies. It is about you feeling like your body doesn't work and that you are broken, but everybody else is working right. And that you telling yourself, well, let me go to college. Man, let me make sure I get a good job. Let me make sure I get a good husband. Let me make sure I get my money right. And then I'll have a baby. If you feel like you were lied to, I did what they told me to do and it's not working for me. There's all these other personal identity things. And then there's also the health aspect. Like I said, I have a son through IVF. My tubes are still blocked. I will never know what it's like to just, oh, we should try next month and see what happens. That won't happen for me. And so while I think people's thoughts are, generally in good conscience, they're not trying to be malicious. It can sometimes feel very much like people don't get it. Like the baby doesn't cure infertility. There's so much more that comes even after you have the baby with your mental health, because now when you're at the mommy and me class, you still will feel like I'm not the same kind of mom that those moms are. I'm not the same kind of parent that those parents are. You still don't fully feel, quote unquote, in the club. And then women who've experienced infertility have higher rates of postpartum depression, anxiety. You get so used to that roller coaster that you start to really feel like anytime you have something good, something bad is going to happen.
Mm. I thought that phrase "babies don't cure infertility." I thought that was so mind blowing, coming from you, who had a child and who is still infertile, because I believe our initial mindset is, oh, once she has a baby, once she gets a child, she'll be okay.
Yeah, she'll be all right.
But what that does is it really minimizes the toll that infertility takes on a woman, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and even in her identity. When we talk about womanhood
and her marriage, her relationships with family, not even just, romantic partnerships, but family members, friends. It changes all of these things that you thought you knew about you. And now you are supposed to now figure out who you are as a woman, as a Black woman, as a married woman, as a single woman, and also now figure it out and be a parent.
Well, like, why does it change those things that, at least for me, I wouldn't initially consider? That if you feel, or if you are infertile, if you're having trouble conceiving, that would change your relationship, say, with your sister friend. That would change your relationship, say, with your brother or your cousin.
I think sometimes there are things that people say, I've watched on social media, people say things like, y'all can have my kids. Shoot, they over here being and that one phrase will change somebody's feelings about somebody, because they'll be like, you are so dismissive and flippant about a gift that you have that I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars to try to get. And it's like, that the person mean it seriously, but when your head is in that place, you take it that way. Or they'll say things to you like, well, I mean, you should just be grateful. You could travel, you could spend your money how you want to spend your money. And I just feel like if you would just relax, or if you would just pray more, or since you don't tithe, people say things,
People
and
said
they're
that to you? People said because you don't tithe, that's why you ain't got no child?
not to me, but I've heard others
Ooh, child.
where especially in the Black community, where it's if things aren't going right in your life, what aren't you doing religiously? If things aren't going right for you, how have you failed God? And that's another thing that we as a community have just got to unwind, because that's not the God I know. He's a loving God, So now you're questioning where you stand with your if that's your belief, you're now questioning where you stand with your creator. You're wondering where you stand with your family, because great aunts, cousins, bless their hearts, they'll say things like, well, we never had that kind of issue in our family. Not thinking, they're just being honest. But now they just told you, well, you the broken one, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's never, I don't think that people think about what they say and how it affects somebody. And so at that point, what we start to do is we put our armor on and we kind of armadillo. We roll into a ball and we just, you know what, I'm not going to tell nobody I'm dealing with it. All right, I'm going to just be quiet. You know what, the last time I told them this was happening and they got all excited and then I had a miscarriage. So I don't want to get everybody excited anymore. So I'm just not going to. And then you stop calling.
Yeah.
And then they stop calling because they don't know what to say. And now you're not speaking to people, not because you don't love them, not because you don't need them, but because they don't know what to say to you. You don't know what to ask for, and you don't know how to tell them when they do hurt you. And all of that gets wrapped up while you going to the doctor, still trying to figure it out, still trying to pay for it. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I just feel like people don't realize how much it is. There was a study that I saw once that said that women dealing with infertility have the same levels of anxiety and depression as those dealing with heart disease, cancer, and HIV.
Mm.
You're questioning who you are 24 hours a day.
Why do you think being able to birth a human, as a woman, especially as a Black woman, why do you think that is so connected to our
Our identity
our
as a Black woman.
identity, a part of it, but also I want to say as a validation to our identity?
Oof, that's heavy. Well, I think, like I said, I think it's also what we're told. We're told that Black women have no problem. Black women have tons of kids. Matter of fact, we don't need to help you with having kids. We need to put more things in your community to help you not get pregnant. Because, I mean, good grief, all of your teenagers are pregnant. Oh my goodness. All of you need help raising your children. Oh my. All these things are, subliminally and sometimes not so subliminally said in our communities through what's marketed to us, through what's said to us. I have heard of women, and I've even seen some that I'm friends with who have gone to, the hospital or the doctor's office or whatever with their children, and the way that they're spoken to by medical professionals or, anyone there, it's with this assumption that you're a single mom, whether you are or not, that this is not your only child, this is not your first pregnancy. There's just a way that they speak to you. So you start to feel like, well, okay, well, I'm supposed to have 5 kids, I guess. I'm supposed to have had 10 because I guess Black women are hyper fertile. That's just what we do. And so that starts being subliminally built into your identity as a Black woman. And then I also have friends who have had relatives tell them things like, it's selfish of you not to want to have kids
Mm.
because you're educated, you have money, you don't live in the hood. You could give a kid more than anything. It's selfish of you to not want children. And it doesn't take into account what that woman wants, what she wants for her life, that she's confident and capable and happy with who she is without children. You just are drilled into our heads that this is a part of what it means to be a Black woman. We're the mothers. We're supposed to. It's what we do. Um, and so when that doesn't happen, you think you're broken. And I've seen women feel as though deciding to stop trying because infertility takes a toll on your body and your mind. And there are some who decide, you know what, I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm good. I'm not going to keep beating myself up because my body is not, maybe that's just not my journey. And the responses that some of them have gotten have been just so disheartening that it's like So I may be content with myself, but I'm being told that this doesn't match who I was made to be.
Mm.
And so I don't know how to be comfortable. So it's, I don't even know if it's our own wanting or if it's, that for some of us. And then for the rest of us, it's also, who am I if I don't do that? Who am I to my family? Who am I to my legacy? Who am I to, Black people in general? Who am I?
The identity piece, because we've had a lot of conversations about this in terms of how we see ourselves in different roles. And do you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Regina, feel free to push back on me when I ask this question, but do you think that it is problematic for a woman to solely find her identity in motherhood?
Oh, yeah. I do believe that, because we have to be whole ourselves. I think it's actually a benefit if you choose to become a mother. It's a benefit to your children if you are clear on your identity apart from them. It's, I feel, important for each of us to figure out who and what we are and allow everything else to add to that and not be based, you know, on that. So
So,
I do feel that way.
and I ask that because I'm wondering if that exponentially adds to the weight of the trauma, the emotional baggage that you're carrying when, as a woman, you don't come into that role. Like, if my expectations in life was like, no, my plan, I just want to be a mom, or I just want to be a mom and a wife, or I just want to take care of some kids. And you can't come into that role for whatever reason, meaning like, this is because society told you this is who you should be, or because this is an innate feeling that you have, that this is what I always wanted to be. Does that add to the emotional turmoil that you have when you are infertile?
I think it can, but I don't think it's the sole thing.
Mm.
So I think there are some of us who, that is, they loved babies from the time they were one. They wanted that. That's who they always dreamed to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do think you need to discover just who you are in addition, like who are you? What would you bring to motherhood? That's important too. But there are some people that has been their goal. That is what I want to be successful in this life. That's what I feel that I want. There are others of us who that turmoil comes from the constant up and down of, it might work, it's not working. Um, I went to this doctor, they didn't listen to me. Now I have fibroids, I don't know what those are. I, it's this constant, what am I, what is happening? Who am I? What is happening to my body? What is happening? Why did anybody tell, that anger piece of, why did anybody
Mhm.
tell me that this was even something that could happen? Why didn't anybody prepare me for this? Why was I not told? Like, that feeling is also a feeling of like you've been lied to. That, first comes love, first, then comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage. Well, that's not what's happening. So who lied to me? Oh, I should go to college. I should make sure I make enough money. I should make sure that I'm doing this right, and then everything will fall into place. Well, that didn't happen. Who lied to me? It's that feeling of like, I did everything right. And so why don't I have what I want or what I feel like is the next step or what I feel like I've earned? Like, all of that, I think, is a part of it. And the sadness that comes from feeling like there's something innately wrong with you, or that, maybe you are in a partnership and you feel like your spouse would be an amazing parent and you can't give them that. There's a sadness in that. There is women who feel like, you know what, if he wants to cheat, he should just find a woman that can give him. Like, all of those feelings, that guilt, I've caused us to not get where we could be. I've stopped him from having the family that he deserves. All of those things add to the turmoil and the sadness And just that feeling of like, you don't have control over your life. You don't have control over your goals. You don't have control over your dreams. You don't have control over any of it. And that is, for many of us, it makes us furious, but it also makes us terrified, because what do I do now? What do I do? Everything feels like this heavy weighted decision. Everything feels like this heavy weighted part of, you know, your identity. And half the time you can't even fully figure it out yourself because you don't get to catch your breath. And so I think that it is part of it, but I think there's all those other parts too that just really, they just tear you up.
One thing you said that was interesting as well, Regina, it was kind of like the dichotomy between what we were taught. What we were taught was good versus what was bad,
Yep.
and how that played out in our lives. For example, as teens and as young people, we were taught that it was bad to be a teen mom, that it was bad to get pregnant if you didn't have a stable income, or if you didn't have a partner. And we were taught that it was good to go to school. It was good to get your ducks in a row, get married, and then get pregnant and have your children. Those are the two stories, the only two stories we were told as it relates to pregnancy. But the interesting, it's funny how life works. The interesting thing about it, as some of us are seeing how life is playing out, what we were taught was bad, we see, at least from the outside looking in, that these women have a life of joy because they have kids who they can love on, and who they can celebrate certain milestones. And then you have the next set of women who are titled good, and I'm using air quotes and all that other stuff, who look back and you say, mom, dad, society, church, job, all y'all told me to do it this way, and I'm losing.
Yep. And then you're angry, furious because you feel like everybody lied to me. I've had so many women in the Broken Brown Egg has a secret support group on Facebook. And I can't begin to tell you how many women over the past few years have said things like, if I had known how much money I could have saved on condoms. Or, you know, just thinking like, you know, I was trying to do this when I was on the pill for this many years, when I could have just went ahead because I was trying to wait till I had this promotion or till I was making this many figures. And so I told my partner that we needed to wait. If I'd have known I was going to have this much trouble, I'd have been like, as soon as we got married, we need to, because now they feel like they've been lied to. They feel like I did it the way everybody told me to, and it didn't work out. And it looks like everybody else who's doing what was supposedly the wrong thing is living their best life, and I'm on the struggle bus. And I think part of it, what we have not done, what we can do a better job as people of color of doing is readjusting our focus. We've been very specific about what we feel is good and what we feel is bad.
Come on.
But if we take those specifics out, it's not so much that I don't want you to be a teenage mom. I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. Let's change the conversation to, I want you to have joy in your life. So I want you to make healthy decisions with your body so that you can make joy, you know, how you want it to be when you get older. I want you to work. I want your work to be your passion. So I want you to make, you know, not, I want you to go to this school and you need to become this and you need, no, I want you to do what you feel that are your gifts and find joy in it and be, you know, someone who gives to this society, gives, you know, of themselves and feels prepared here. Whatever it is that we want, we're now figuring out that I got the right to want that, because the way we were given it has been so specific. Anything that fell outside of those lines felt like I can't do that. I shouldn't do that. If I do this, it'll ruin everything. If I do this, I won't be accepted by my family. If I do this, I'll let my parents down. If I do this. So I just want us to get out of being so specific about what we want us not to do,
Yeah.
and being specific about what we need to tell each other to do, and really just focus on it's the feeling. I want you to have a life that brings you joy. Period. If in that you have kids when you're 16, but you have a life that brings you joy, we still won. Because then you won't be 45 feeling like somebody cheated you and somebody lied to you, because you're not looking at those specifics. You're looking at, am I happy? Do I have joy? Am I fulfilled? You know, when we start looking at everything that we're told to do and not to do, you start looking at you start operating from a place of lack. And that's where a lot of us got tripped up.
Yeah, that was my next question, because I think and you may have touched on this before, Regina, but like, how did this get into our psyche? Like, how did we come to learn and to know this? Because it seems like a lot of the language around sex education and how our sexual reproductive system functions is rooted in fear. It is a patriarchal, racist, systemic teaching that we learn from about our bodies, and how to navigate this life so we can be most successful.
I think fear is the big one. I think fear is I think historically, and I could be completely off base, and I'm sure somebody will tell me if I am.
Both of us.
What I've observed, I think a lot of things that we do are rooted in love and fear. I love you and I'm afraid for you, so let me protect you. I
Mhm.
love you and I'm afraid for you, so please don't ever have sex. Don't ever get pregnant, because then you can't go to college. And if you don't go to college, you won't make any money. If you don't make any money, you won't be successful. If you're not successful, you're going to be here. And I don't want you to be here, because this is where I am. I love you and I'm afraid for you. So let me make sure that you go to this school and study this thing, even if it's not what you love, because I need you to work a job that's going to be stable for you and keep you safe. And I don't really want you to be an artist, because you won't make money. And if you don't make money, you won't be successful. If you're not successful, you won't be safe. And I think that is where a lot of it has come from. Um, my paternal grandmother had a lot of children, and she had a lot of siblings who she took care of when she was young. And so when she then grew up to have a lot of children of her own, she had an identity crisis of, who am I other than someone who's always taking care of children?
Mm.
And she eventually moved out and got an apartment of her own to just kind of reclaim herself. And it was really difficult for my dad, because he was young. But her thought process was, I have given so much of myself. And her life at that point was, I want people to do what they want to do, because I feel like I never got a chance to do what I wanted to do. And so I think that's a lot of that psyche, is feeling like, I don't want you to have this life that I've had. I want better for you. And so if I have to protect you by limiting you, then unfortunately that's just what it's going to be, because I want you safe and I want you in a better position. And so I'm cutting out anything that will block you from getting there. And so that gets drilled into us. Don't have kids. That'll mess you up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Don't do that. You got to go to school. What you mean school ain't for everybody? It's going to be for you. That thought process is, I need you safe. That's why we are the way we are with our kids. That's why the way we are with each other. These are my observations. We hold our kids real tight. We want, you know, don't talk back, don't do this, do that. And I personally feel that that's rooted in the past. If you talk back, you can get killed.
Yeah.
I need you to know that when I say be quiet, it means be quiet. And that has come through generations, but now it doesn't have the context.
Yeah.
And so that fear-based communication with us, it doesn't have the context. When I'm sure traditionally there were genuine fears rooted in genuine and actual things that could happen, but it's been passed down without an explanation of why. I need you to listen to keep you safe has turned into I need you to listen so people know I get my kids in check.
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing, or I need you to go to school because when you graduate, you're moving all of us out of here because we are moving has turned into I need you to go to school because I want you to have a good job because I want you to buy me a car. It's we've changed what the rationale is, and we aren't as intentional. And so what's left is just the fear. And we got to get out of that because it limits us and it keeps us from being honest, because that same fear is why we're not telling each other, I've had 2 miscarriages. I've experienced fibroids. Oh, I have polycystic ovary syndrome. Oh, this is why this is. Oh, that same fear keeps us quiet. And when we're quiet, we can't progress. We have to tell each other what's going on so we can fix what's going on. But we got to stop being rooted in fear. We have to be intentional about being hopeful. And that's a hard thing to change in terms of an entire culture. So it's literally a each one teach one. I tell people transparency is part of my self-care. It helps me feel better to take off that mantle that Black women and Black men have held up. I had to act like I got it together. I can't let these people see me upset. I got to make sure that, even if I'm going to fake it till I make it, they're going to really think I got it. All of that while you trying to like live will kill you.
Yeah. It will kill you. That's why we do what we do. What's one thing people don't know about infertility?
I think the biggest thing is that babies don't cure it, that you can have a baby and still deal with the same sadness, still be trying to figure out where you fit, still question. I struggled with really bad postpartum depression and anxiety when I finally did have my son. And one of the things that I kept ruminating over was feeling like I pushed God's hand. If he wanted me to have kids, I would have had kids. But by me doing IVF, I pushed God's hand. I'm going to owe something for this. I know something bad is going to happen because I'm the one that really pushed this. And all of that is playing in my head while I could be playing with my son and just saying, thank you, God. I could be hanging out with him and just saying, you know what, I'm grateful, or just let's play trains or whatever. Instead, I was so stuck on that loop of what do I have to pay for this joy? What do I owe for this happiness? What do I have to give back? And that happens for so many of us, whether they're just starting the journey, whether they have decided not to have kids, whether they have decided that they're going to wait a while, whatever the case, those kind of thoughts about, what do I owe? What can I give? Who am I? What do I feel? Those feelings are so intense. They make it hard for you to do and then you got to go to work. You got to go to work. You got to be a normal person. You got to smile. You got to go to that baby shower that you really don't want to go to. You have to listen to people complain about their kids. You have to do all of these things while trying to like hold yourself together with, spit and tape.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that people really don't understand is that it is such an emotional, it affects your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your relationship with your spirituality, all of that comes into question because it's a question of identity. It really is.
So how did you begin to move forward? Because you were on a 10-year journey.
Yep.
And I can't imagine the roller coaster. I don't know if I would have maintained the faith throughout that. And I'm not like assuming that you did. I'm assuming that it was up and down, the ebbs and flows. Am I going to do this? Am I going to continue? But how did you push through? What were your coping mechanisms? How did you reconcile with whatever was going to be whatever? Because mind you, we're hearing in a sense, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. That's what we're hearing.
Right.
But there are some women who are on their 5th year of what could potentially be their 10-year process. You know, there are some women who are on their 1st year who could be of their 10-year process or their 15-year process. We don't know. So how did you begin to cope, to reconcile, to accept peace in your life? What was that like for you?
Well, I think a lot of people sometimes, if they haven't read my blog extensively, don't know my full story. And a lot of it was very up and down. So there were times where I didn't have insurance, and so I'd have to stop. There's all of those things that were happening. And sometimes just allowing myself to say exactly what I wanted to say, regardless of how angry or sad or depressed I was, I just found a way to say it, because silence will eat you up. Because now you're just thinking all of those things to yourself. And so finding ways to write it out, to speak it out, to do things through the broken brown egg, to do things to make sure somebody else didn't feel alone. All of those things helped give me some of my peace, because I felt like, okay, 1, I'm not in it alone. And 2, girl, you're not in it alone either. Let's go. And 3, I'm going to keep pushing at this, and I will stop when I want to, but I won't quit. Like all of those things, you just start to kind of teach yourself, I'm tough. I can do anything. You start to just build yourself up. And when you can't, you've built a community, or you find that the infertility community is such a supportive community, because we all know how devastated we've each been. That you have somebody else and you could say, I'm struggling today. I would also do, on Mother's Day, I would do a virtual wine sip where I would use Google Hangouts or any other, video platform. And women who were struggling on Mother's Day, we would get together, and each of us, wherever we were, would have a glass of wine, and we would just vent for that day. Any little way that I could find to take some power back from this thing, I'm all about that. And I'm all about helping other people do that. I tell other people, be transparent. Tell these people what you're dealing with. You don't have to tell all your business to tell somebody, you know what, I'm dealing with something right now, and that was disrespectful. You know what, Thanksgiving is not the time to ask me when I'm going to have kids. I find that highly disrespectful. You know what, thank you so much. I think what you're trying to say is that you think I'd be a great mom. Pray for me. I appreciate that. But please stop asking me what I'm waiting on. All of those things give you your power back. Trying to be quiet and going, oh, I'm sorry, well, we're working on it. No, because people will continue to line step. They will continue to try you at every family gathering until you get somebody together and say, hey, you know what? That's not okay. We don't ask people about their wombs. Thank you.
Yeah.
You got to get people together so that they know not to try you. But also, you don't know who else at that table you just saved from having to hear that, or who at that person's job you just saved from them coming in and telling them that. So transparency, being vocal, and finding ways to snatch my power back that helped all those years when I really felt like, maybe there were times where I felt like, well, maybe that's not what maybe I'm just supposed to be the auntie and the godmother, and I'm supposed to help everybody else, and it's not. You start to really feel like that. And it's devastating, because it's like, but I don't believe it. I feel like this, but I don't believe this. I feel like this, but I don't believe it. I believe more for myself. And that is an internal battle. So I just take your power back however you can.
Thank you, Regina.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope it was healing and revelatory for you, especially around Mother's Day. And of all the things I learned in this conversation, there was one thing I wanted to highlight, one thing that Regina shared. I asked her what was the most transformational part about her journey. And she very simply answered the compassion that she learned for others. And I thought that, especially now, that this was important because just amid everything that I could possibly imagine that's happening right now in the lives of individuals, in the thread of America, from people who are working the front line, from social justice to our elected officials, is that we simply don't know the weight of what others are carrying. We can assume, but we don't know. We don't know what others are going through, what others are surviving through in any given moment or encounter. So that's the one thing I want to leave with you all today, is to be intentionally compassionate as you pass someone in the grocery store, on the road, at the gas station. If you're one of those frontline workers, to be be intentionally compassionate to these folks. These people are putting their life on the line. You could encounter a mother who just lost her son to sanctioned state violence. You could encounter a mother who's been trying to conceive for years. So please, guys, if there's anything you take away from this, is to be intentionally compassionate. And if you like what you heard on the Good Girl podcast, if you love what we do, consider supporting us. And you can support us in one of several ways. First and foremost, real easy, make sure you have subscribed to the Good Girl podcast. Subscribe so you can get our updates regularly. The other thing you can do is share the podcast. Make sure you are following us on all of our social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and interact and engage with us. And the last thing you can do is simply purchase some items. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, we have coffee mugs, and it's a part of the Believe in the Good brand. And so I hope through every podcast that you hear the good in these circumstances, through our rawness, through our truth, through everything we go through figuring out life. I hope you still believe in the good, and even amid everything that's happening, it's hard sometimes. It is really tough, but to continue to hope and know that there is good. It's hard for me to say this, especially right now, but that there is good in every situation. So thank you for listening to the Good Girl podcast, and I hope you continue to believe in the good.